In this lesson, we'll finish out the tank. Alright, so we've got the tank here. We want to do a few things. The first thing that I want to do is change this color. I'm kind of tired of looking at this pink tank. So anytime that you have any of your objects created, they're going to come in with this kind of a color. It's not really material, but you can go ahead and click on that and change it to whatever you want. So I'm going to go ahead and just change this to kind of a red color. And you can do the same thing for the frame if you wanted to. It kind of helps to differentiate between some of the different pieces sometimes. But you can always come in and change those particular colors if you want to. Alright, so now we want to add some sharpness to this vent area. And so if I go ahead and smooth this, you can kind of see that I want to have this a little bit sharper right in here. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to go ahead and just draw another line across there. Okay, so right in here. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is actually take out this piece of the vent. So I'll go ahead and choose polygon selection. Just select these top polygons. I'll go ahead and say grow a couple of times. And then what we can do is extract these. Okay, so we'll go down to edit geometry. And let's go ahead and detach. And I want to just detach it to an element. And what that'll do is it'll keep it within this editable poly, but it'll make a separate element out of it. So I'll go ahead and detach that. Okay, so now I can select this. It looks like it's still part of this, but it's actually separated out. Okay, and so now what I want to do is let's go ahead and isolate this. And I want to add a little bit of detail right across here. And I'm going to actually isolate this here. And so I want to add a little bit of detail right across this part. So I'll take an edge selection, go ahead and select that edge and the ring, okay, and then I'll just do a connect, and I'll drop that down right along here. So that'll kind of help to sharpen this up a bit when we go ahead and smooth it. Okay, so you get something like that. Now we also need to do it with the piece that's kind of goes over here, this black piece. We also need to do it for that. So let me go ahead and select that. Okay, and then select those edges. Okay, and I'll drop it in kind of in the same area. And just kind of drag it down there. Okay, so that when we smooth these, they should match up a little bit better. Okay, and now you can see that our vent doesn't match up much very well anymore. So to fix that, you just want to add a line across in the kind of the same area, and that'll add that same amount of sharpness there on the side. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that just by selecting the edges, selecting the ring, and then just doing connect on that and bringing that down. You should get something that matches up a little bit better. Okay, so one other thing that I want to do is kind of smooth out this area. Okay, so I don't want to have quite a sharp line here as what we've got. I still want to leave that geometry there, but I just want to smooth out this area a little bit. So what we can do is use our paint deformation. Before we do that, I just want to add one extra line right in here to hold this, because we've got these big long polygons right in here. And so I want to add one more line, and I just want to drop this right in the middle. So I'll just say OK to that. Alright, now with this selected, we'll go all the way to the bottom of our rollouts here, and you'll find paint deformation. So in this case, I just want to relax these. I don't want to pull anything out or push anything in, so I'm going to go ahead and go relax. And you can see the brush size that we've got here. Okay. Oops. Go ahead and get back to our perspective there. So what I want to do is dial that brush size down. Okay, something a little bit closer. So we've got about a 3-inch size there. Let's go down to maybe 2.5. And let's take our brush strength down to maybe 0.2. So we want to be very gentle about this. And so as I click in here, you can see I'm just kind of pulling these lines apart just a little bit. Okay, go ahead and take that down to maybe 2 inches. down here. Okay, and then maybe down here you want to get kind of a little bit of a smaller brush. And just kind of pull it through there and just kind of smooth everything out a little bit. Okay, and that'll eliminate some of the real hard edges that we're getting there. Okay, so once we do that, we can go ahead and check that out. You can toggle that. And you can see it's been smoothed out a little bit. So you could, to your heart's content, smooth that out. I'm going to go ahead and take this guy here and I'll turn off the toggle, the NURBS toggle. And so now what I want to do is just create the other side of this. Go ahead and get out of the scale there. So I want to create the other side of the tank. So I'll take the tank and I want to add a symmetry modifier to this. So let's go ahead and go to the modifier list, add symmetry. And this isn't the correct axis. So if we flip through these, you can see that this is up and down. And this one is actually what we want, the z-axis. Okay, we can flip that, which turns that inside out. If you look at our wireframe, there is our mirror. So we can move that back and forth. Okay, we want it snapped right in the center. Okay, so there we've got that geometry. It's now been mirrored over to the other side. And with this symmetry modifier on, if we turn that off, you can see this is our original. Have that on. If we now go back here and turn on this show end result, and now go in and start to move some of these points around, you can see the result over on the other side. So you can do your symmetrical modeling in here with the symmetry modifier on to be able to see the changes that you're actually creating. Okay. If we go to our symmetry, you can see that the threshold for welding that together. So if we look in here, if we start to dial this threshold up, you can see some of these points start getting welded together and they don't really need to be. So we need to make sure that our threshold is sufficiently low. Okay, and if all of our points are on the origin snapped, then we shouldn't have much of an issue with going fairly low. If you have some points that are a little bit farther apart that you need to weld together, you might want to modify that so it's a little bit higher. But in this case, I think we should be good. You want to check and make sure any of the points that are real close together haven't been merged. That's kind of how you can check. So once we're okay with that, go ahead and now collapse that if we want to make it one editable poly. Okay, and so now we need to create kind of a piece across the top. So I need to create a little bit more geometry across here. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this edge and choose the loop. So choose the entire loop, and I want to create a few edges here where we had one before. So I'm going to go ahead and chamfer that under Edit Edges. So we'll go ahead and open that up, and you can see there I've got one segment and an amount. And so you can see right there it's taking that one edge and splitting it into two and trying to maintain that curvature. Okay, we can do that. If we want to maintain the middle portion of this, we can go ahead and add two segments there. We can kind of pull that out, and that creates this sort of additional lines in there along with the line that we originally have. So I'll say OK to that. And now what we can do is go ahead and take some of these polygons. So I'm going to take basically these polygons right up here. Okay. And let's go ahead and select all of these. And we'll use these to create our additional piece. So we need to go ahead and detach those. So let's go ahead and go to Edit Geometry, Detach. And we want to detach it as a clone. We don't want to take that geometry out of the original. We want to use it and copy that. So we'll go ahead and detach it as a clone. Okay, and that gives us this piece here. So now we need to think about, we want a couple of different pieces here. We want a kind of a long, thin piece that's a little bit thinner than this. And then we want another piece that's kind of this thickness but a little bit shorter. So I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate this just by pulling this up and out of the way, holding down Shift. Okay, make a copy of that. Now this one, I'll go ahead and cut off, just delete those polygons. And then this one, I actually want to make this a bit narrower. So I'm going to go ahead and take this middle edge, select the loop, and chamfer that. And this time, let's go into our wireframe. This time I want to do right about there, make it a bit thinner. Say OK to that. Okay. And then we're stuck with that. So now we can go ahead and delete all of these outer polygons. So we're using the geometry that we created to create additional pieces on top of this tank. And for this particular bike, this tank is actually kind of it's made up of these replaceable covers that you can kind of change the color of your bike. And it actually, part of the tank is actually kind of underneath this guy. Okay, let's go ahead and go to our perspective. Okay, and so we want to add some thickness to this. So we'll go ahead and take our shell modifier to do that. Take our shell modifier. This time we want to add an outer amount because we're laying right on the surface of this and we want to go out. So we'll go ahead and add an outer amount. And you could penetrate that in just a little bit by adding just a tiny bit of inner. Okay, and I can dial our segments down a little bit. You can go ahead and give it a different color to differentiate the pieces there. Now this piece, okay, I want to center the pivot so I can move it around a little bit more. So hierarchy, effect pivot only, center to pivot, center to object. And this piece we want to actually make another thickness on top of this, but we want it to be kind of circular in the back. So I'm going to modify some of these points before I do anything else. So I'll kind of take this point, move it out. Let's take both of these and just kind of scale those in. Okay, and that'll give us a little bit more of a circular shape in the back before we add that shell. So I'll kind of move it down into position, kind of a certain amount from the top there. Okay, just something like that. And then we can add a shell modifier to this guy. And find the shell. Okay, and we'll just do the same thing, and we can move that in here. Okay, and then we can also go in and add that color to that as well. Okay, so you can take and add any of these. Looks like we missed a couple of faces there, but you can go ahead and add any of this geometry, and using the tank that we've already got enables you to kind of match up a little bit better with the contours of this, and you can just use that geometry rather than trying to build this out and match up that shape. You're actually able to use that shape that exists already and to build your geometry. All right, and then you can add your edges along there to keep that nice and tight when we smooth it and so forth. And don't forget to name things. We'll look a little bit more about naming things, but you can go into your schematic view and start to kind of name some of these shapes, or you can just select them and name them up here. Make it a little bit more sense once we start getting into some of these things. So in the next lesson, let's go ahead and look at working on this seat. And the seat's really interesting. You can kind of see some of these complex curves in here, and we've got a kind of a cutout circle here. So we'll look at how we can create that in the next lesson.